one of the many challenges Scrum teams face is splitting user story. In Agile, we continue to encourage our team and we continue to guide our team to ensure that we'll write a user story that will be small enough to fit in a single sprint. On today's topic, my goal is to cover technique I've used throughout my experience in splitting user story. And I won't lie, that's one of the biggest challenge for any Scrum Master will face in coaching the Scrum team better techniques in splitting user story. Because the smaller user story is, the easier for a team to work on it. So that's why in my today's topic, my goal is to go over techniques, what you can use that can help your Scrum team split your user story to a smaller unit that can help deliver this value to your end users. Hello everyone, welcome back to Aisha Scrum. I'm very happy to have you all here today. For my subscriber, my current subscriber, my new subscribers, I welcome you all to my channel. And if you are interested in mentorship, do not hesitate to call me at 484-767-1979. Or if you're interested, you can also email me at admin@aishatech.com. So behind my board, I put like a description on ways how we can split user story. But before we discuss on ways how we can split user story, it's very important for me to state that it's very important for us to have a well-written user story, right? If you look at my previous video about what is a user story, that I described that in 10 minutes, that will basically help prepare you for today's class. And I will highly encourage you to watch that video first about what is a user story before you try to discuss on ways how you want to split a user story. So if you look at just a quick recap on that, if you look at my top layer is to cover invest criteria. Because always in a team, we come up with a checklist of definition of ready on how we can ensure that we have our user story that we can fit enough that can be valuable to be completed in a sprint, right? And the invest criteria, basically, which is the independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable, it's just steps that we want to use to ensure that our story is small enough to fit in a sprint, right? And another challenges that I've noticed that as a team will always face is having that valuable. Like ensuring that we are splitting a user story that's valuable, right? Valuable. Because sometimes you'll see a user story that's written and you look at it and you basically, it's either like a component or a task. And we don't want that in Agile, right? We ensure at all given time we're writing a user story that meets the end-to-end, right? So going back to my little cake design here, I know I just drew little colors. Well, this is my cake. Basically, they're saying that at all time we want our user story to meet the end-to-end, vertically sliced. So I want all parts of the cake, some part of it, like not everything that's completed, but some part of it, in all of it. All user story must contain each of these slides of a cake. So like for example, if I look the top layer is the user interface, right? And the next layer is logic, the next layer is security, and the last layer is database. So instead of you just as a team to just write a user story for database, which at the end, it's not going to be something that's going to be valuable to the end user, or you can use just database and basically get a feedback from your customer. But instead, what we can do is to coach our team to ensure that each of those layers contain in the user story. So that's the horizontal method. That's just one layer each. Because that's very common in the traditional method, whereby one layer must be completed before they move on to the next layer. But in Agile, we encourage and coach our team to ensure that they're writing a user story that's vertically sliced, right? So they're building some part of each layer. So that's what that. So in order for us to ensure we do all of this, there's a lot of techniques we can use. but we always encourage for the user story to be vertically sliced. All right, so now I have different technique on my board on ways how we can split user story. So based on my research, I found a lot of good articles out there about splitting user story, but I won't lie, there was not a lot. But I know one of them that was so popular was the research splitting story chat. He had like a lot of very good points which have been downloaded by a lot of people. It has like different languages too on that. So I came up with this little summary that I think it can also help other people that's looking for ways in Scrum Master and how to coach your team in splitting user story. First one I have on my board is workflow steps. Because sometimes when you are working on a new project or you are working on an existing project, an end user will want something. And sometimes when they tell you what they want, it might sound so simple, which you're going to see in the example here, but it's going to involve multiple steps for you to actually do the end goal. So instead of you just writing one user story that will involve that in a sprint, which high chances that going to be a spillover because they can be completed in within 2 weeks, we can further split that. So the first example I have in my board is, as a clothing brand owner, I want to upload my clothes online so that I can be able to sell, right? So this clothing brand owner would like to upload their clothes online so that they can be able to sell it. So that's what this end user wants, right? They're telling you what they want. But if you look at it, like, okay, you just want to upload your clothing brand online, that's simple. But that actually can take multiple flows and multiple steps in order for this clothing brand owner for them to actually upload their picture. So let's discuss those steps that this clothing brand owner have to do, right? So if we think about it, first they have to have an online website, right? And then they have to like ensure the people that come into the website, they're able to log on that website. And next thing, you have to have they have to create a picture or maybe a description for the cloth and be in place before finally they can actually present this cloth to potential people that will buy it online. So instead of you just having a user story on your backlog as an end customer user, I would like to upload a cloth. Instead, you can focus on this sprint, creating login access. Next sprint, customer will be able to upload their picture. Next sprint, customer will be able to add description, or break down the workflow, sprint to sprint, instead of you just having that big one to upload the whole picture on a website. So that's one example. So the next thing I have on my board is operation. And operation is just describing like steps an end user will want for them to be able to have access to something. So they take like different operations. So in this operation, what I've seen based on my research that actually help people is using the CRUD method. And the CRUD method is the C stands for create, the R stands for read, and the U stands for update, and the D stands for delete. So looking at my board, I have the example in my board here saying that as a publisher, I want to manage my publication online. The story is written in that format. It sounds simple, right? And it sounds like, oh, okay, a publisher just want to have their publication online. So that sounds simple, but it actually takes a lot of steps to get that in place. And in these steps for this particular publisher, they can basically create article, use these steps in this operation. They can create article, and that can be for one sprint, whereby we can have a space on that site where this publisher can able to create their article. And the next thing is to read article, whereby this publisher, before they can even publish this article, they can also read it, go over it, right? And the next thing is to update article. If there's any changes or anything they want to do, they'll have a space to basically want to update the article. And the lastly is to delete the article. So all of this basically is explained that we can focus on this in sprint 1. And in sprint 2, we can try to include this functionality. And in sprint 3, we can try to include this functionality. And in sprint 4, we can create this functionality. Instead of just working on all of this one big item in a particular sprint, which is a high likely that we might not complete it. So that's another example. So another example I have in my board is business rule, right? So business rule, that's something like it's broad. It can be very specific based on what you are working on, but using this technique also can reduce the chance of you committing to a bigger story. Instead, you can try to further break it down to ensure that you are focused on some part of those rules each sprint. So looking at my board, I have an example of as a consultant, I want to accept multiple payment methods, right? So this particular consultant that's giving services, they would like to accept multiple payment method. And you can see that by the word multiple, that means that that's a big tax. For me as a Scrum Master, if I hear look at that clue like that, okay, this sounds like it's huge, it's big. So they can now coach the team. Okay, this is a multiple things to be done. Is there a way we can further split that? Maybe in sprint one we can focus on accepting credit card, and for will that going to be a user story as a user as an online consultant. I would like to accept credit card, and acceptance criteria can be like a Visa card, MasterCard, or any type of credit card. Like they can basically focus on that tax for that particular sprint. And maybe for the next sprint, they can focus on accepting, as a user, I would like to accept debit card. So that's regardless of your bank, like any other bank, like West Fargo, Bank of America, any of those banks, they'll accept debit card. And the last one is different method to pay online. Like for the next sprint, you can focus on accepting different online payment method system like Apple Pay, Google Pay, or Amazon Pay, or different kind of pays that we have on them. PayPal is one of them. So, and in that next sprint, we'll focus on that. Instead of us having one big user story in the sprint, of having it as multiple payment system, because there's a high chance we might not complete all of that in a 2 weeks period. And at all given time too, as your team, as you are discussing this way to split this story, we all know that we have to collaborate with the product owner, right? Because sometimes things might sound so like, oh, we can just do this, we can just do that. And the PO will be like, oh, based on the business needs or based on our feedback, this is something that's impossible, right? So it's very, very important for you to always collaborate with your product owner as all of this is being happening. And the best place to even discuss all of this is during backlog refinement. All right, so the other last technique I have in ways how we can split user story in my board is application supporting platform, multiple platform. So this one is actually very broad because we know like back in the days, we only have like desktop computer for like if you want to like browse and stuff. And now basically we have a computer in our mini hand, in our phone, right? So in this case too, we can also try to coach our team to get them to focus on different platforms instead of just doing all of them in one. So the example I have on my board here that we can discuss in this user story is, as a food content creator, I want to upload my food pictures on my website. So basically, this food content creator, they want to upload their picture on a website, right? So we all know that we have a website. People can view it from their desktop. They can view it from their laptop, their telephone, iPad, and all of that. So we'll say for this particular sprint, we're gonna focus on uploading image using laptop, where the customer can view it in a laptop format. They can view it also in their mobile phone, and also mobile and phone. That's the same thing, right? They can view it in the mobile, in their mobile, basically. So focusing on that and splitting I have for this sprint, maybe we'll have it for people that want to view in the laptop. The next people want to view in on mobile and all that. And the next thing I have is browser type. So we all know we have Safari, we have Google Chrome, and we have Internet Explorer. You know, those are all different types too we can focus on. But instead of us having all of this written in one user story format as a website, where we can further split it and focus on the particular like different platform, you know, they can hold. So that's very, very important. So those are the techniques through my research that I found that's helpful for splitting user story. Another one too that's that's very, very popular out there, even myself when I was new, I learned the SPIDR technique. And the SPIDR technique is also that still data is still being used and is very valuable, especially when you are helping setting up a new project, right? And a lot of times team continue to use it. So the S stands for spike, the P stands for path, I interface, D data, and R roles. So let's start from path, right? Because path, so when a team is discussing how they can write a user story, sometimes there can be multiple paths, right? So if you're coming up with a multiple path, in this case, let's just have an example of when a customer would like to create an account for Google. Let's say you want to create an account for your Gmail for Google, right? And when you are creating that account, there's two things can happen, right? One, let's focus on this sprint is the happy path. Meaning, in this sprint, we'll have a space where we can write a code where these customers that want to come in and create a Google access, they basically follow the rules we have for the login, put in their Gmail and their password and create their account, put in all their information, and things gonna go fine. And yes, they're happy the account is created. We can focus on that part in this sprint. Let's focus on the unhappy part. The only unhappy part will be to create an account on Gmail. Like you put in your information, you put in your login information, and at the end when you hit create button, you are unable to create the account due to some rules that was in place that you were unable to meet, and you get an error message. So we can focus on the unhappy part in sprint 1. Next part will be unhappy part next sprint. So that's for that part. So there can be multiple parts. Just focus on one in a sprint and do the other part in the next sprint and the following sprint. So that's the summary for the part. So the next thing is interface. And if you look at the interface, it's going back to what I described here for application supporting multiple platforms. And interface can be like a different type, can be browse type, version on hardware. But going back to maybe if we have like different interface, we can have, instead of us just making a big user story and focusing for one in sprint, we can focus in this sprint desktop. The next desktop interface. The next sprint we're going to focus on like the browsing type, like Safari, Mozilla, all of that. So it's the same thing with that. That's the interface. And the next one is data. So when it comes to data, it's very important for you to know there's like different type of data based on what you are trying to create on this site, right? But in this case, we can try to focus on one part of it. So let's say we are creating you're a new employee and you want to create your account for your benefits online, right? And you'll notice that if you're creating that, you have to put in your own personal information. So we can say for this sprint, we're going to focus on anything text. We can focus on having that data in this sprint, anything text. And the next thing we can put for numbers, like if you have your address or zip code, all those things can all be put in following that for the number. Date of birth. And with date of birth, we can also like have a calendar, right? And the calendar will show for you to pick what date you were born and all of that. So maybe we can split all of those based on text, calendar, and address by numbers, instead of us just doing all of that in one sprint. So the next thing I have is roles, right? So we all do this every day. You might not be familiar with it, but rules is very common a lot with website. The biggest one is password, right? When you're creating password, there's another two ways you can do with that. One way would be like you must have numbers with your password, and you are not allowed to use your name. You are not allowed to use your date of birth for your password. And when you do those, it's going to give you an error message. And if you are able to come up with your number, you are successfully be able to create the account and log in. But if you fail these rules that's set up in place, you are unable to log in that account to get an error message. So by using rules, you can also use rules to split user story to ensure that you focus on happy login people in this sprint. Maybe the next one can be error message for the next one. So the spike, and the last one I have is spike. And it's very important that I put spike last, because I know sometimes in teams, right away we just want to jump in and go to spike. but it's very, very advised that we do Spike last, and Spike basically is to doing some research and to get more knowledge about what we're going to be doing before implementation. Because if you just try to do something you don't know, it's more difficult than instead you taking your time to learn it, and through your lesson from that, you now use it to now create or implement. So it's very important to do this last and not first. You should always try all these other parts first in splitting user story. And if any of that will not work, and then your team can go into Spike. So I hope all of this summary on splitting user story have been very helpful for you all. And this is one area that is going to take a lot of skills. It takes a lot of trial and error for your team to get to that position of able to split user story. Do not happen overnight. Myself, it took me a lot of research and learning for me to even know all of these techniques of splitting user story. So continue to support your team and encourage them and guide them, and continue to research on it. It definitely can help your team. And it takes a whole skills in splitting user story. And if you missed my video on what is a user story and the simple description of user story and the templates, look at my last user story video. I think that will definitely be helpful for you prior to watching this video. And if you're interested in mentorship, do not hesitate to email me at admin@aishascrumtech.com. You can also call me at 484-767-1979. Thank you all for watching my video, and thank you all for subscribing. I really appreciate you all, and see you all again in my next video.